You say you want success. You say you're tired of being average. You talk about your dreams like they're waiting for you, like they'll still be there tomorrow when you scroll for 5 more minutes, when you hit snooze again, when you skip the work because you're not in the right mindset. But here's the harsh truth. If you can't focus, you don't deserve success. That dream you keep posting about, it's not yours. Not yet. Because focus isn't a switch you flip when you're in the mood. It's a weapon you sharpen every single day. Focus is sacrifice. It's not sexy. It's not exciting. It's the discipline to shut everything else out. The noise, the distractions, the comfort, the excuses. It's the ability to say no to what doesn't matter so you can say yes to the life that does. But most people never make it past that line because most people would rather stay comfortable than get focused. You've been lied to your entire life, told that success follows passion, that fire leads to consistency, that if you just find your why, everything else will fall into place. But the truth is far more brutal. Focus doesn't show up when you feel inspired. Focus doesn't wait for your emotions to align with your ambitions. Focus is a weapon built through repetition, forged in discomfort, and executed when it's least convenient. And until you accept that, you will stay where you are, circling the same dreams, trapped in the same patterns, wondering why nothing changes. Because while you wait for motivation, someone else is building momentum. Someone else is out there doing the work you say you want to do, and they're doing it without needing to feel ready. They've already figured out the secret. Focus is a skill. You either sharpen it or you let it rust. There is no middle ground. You think focus is supposed to feel good, that you need to be in a perfect mental state before you begin. You believe that if something matters, it should come naturally, but nothing important in life works that way. Do you breathe when it's convenient? Do you eat only when it feels inspiring? Of course not, because survival doesn't wait for mood. Neither does greatness. The people who rise, who build, who dominate their field, they aren't running on feelings. They're running on frameworks. They've trained their minds the same way an athlete trains a muscle, with intentional effort, with discipline, with repetition, so boring and so consistent it would make the average person quit in less than a week. Because the real work isn't in the idea. It's in the execution. And execution doesn't care how you feel. Most people never learn this. Most people chase sparks instead of systems. They scroll for motivation, consume inspiration, write down goals they'll never commit to because they think success is about intensity. It's not. It's about duration. Focus that lasts longer than excuses. Effort that outlives emotion. You don't need hype. You need habits. You need to master the boring, to become relentless in your execution of the simple. Because what separates winners from wishers isn't talent. It's not intelligence. It's not background or resources or opportunity. It's focus. Focus under pressure. Focus in silence. Focus when no one's watching and nothing feels exciting. Every day you make a decision. 100 tiny ones, really. Will you engage in the task or distract yourself from it? Will you show up, or will you wait for some perfect moment that doesn't exist? Will you grind when it's quiet or drift toward comfort and call it rest? You lie to yourself about the time you have, the potential you're sitting on, the effort you'll give tomorrow. But tomorrow never shows up different unless you change today. And today demands focus. Not later, not when your mood lifts. Now, right now, and again tomorrow and the next day. Because this is the only way it works. The world doesn't reward potential, it rewards output. And output demands attention. Sharp, disciplined, uninterrupted attention. Repeated with consistency, so dull, most people never last long enough to see results. That's why most people stay stuck. They dabble, they try, they say they'll give it everything after this weekend, once the pressure's off, when things calm down. But life doesn't calm down, life escalates. And the successful ones? They don't wait for the storm to pass. They train their mind to execute in the chaos. They make focus a reflex, something they can turn on regardless of how they feel. And that's where power begins. When you stop depending on emotion and start depending on execution. Motivation is a child's strategy. It's fragile. It disappears when you're tired. It flees when results don't come fast enough. It folds the moment you feel resistance. But skill? Skill holds up under weight. Skill shows up even when you don't want it to. Skill kicks in when your body says quit. Skill is what you fall back on when you've got nothing left. Focus as a skill means your habits do the work when your head is screaming to stop. That's what separates the committed from the curious, the pros from the pretenders, the driven from the distracted. You can't afford to treat focus like it's optional. It is the doorway to everything you want. Every goal, every milestone, every transformation, it begins with focus. And not just focus in short bursts. Not focus when you're caffeinated or excited. Real focus. Controlled, deliberate, trained focus that you summon on command. Like a professional, you don't need to want it, you just need to do it. Because mastery doesn't ask how you feel, it only asks what you did. If you want to become unbreakable, you start by mastering your attention. Everything flows from that. Your body won't change without focused effort. Your career won't grow without focused execution. Your mindset won't evolve without focused input. Focus is the operating system of success. You can't outsource it. You can't delegate it. You either own it or you stay in the loop of starting over again and again, wondering why your intensity never turns into consistency. And here's the part no one wants to admit. You already know what to do. You're just distracted. You've convinced yourself that you need more time, more hacks, more motivation, more tips. But what you need is fewer excuses and more control. You need to create a space where focus becomes non-negotiable. You need to cut the noise. Stop checking every notification like your future depends on it. It doesn't. In fact, your future is dying every time you pick up that phone out of habit. Every minute lost in distraction is a brick pulled from the foundation of your progress. You think 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there don't matter, but they add up. And the reason why your output is inconsistent, you don't need longer days. You need tighter attention. You need to protect your focus like your goals depend on it, because they do. Focus isn't built in inspiration. It's built in discomfort. It's built in saying no to everything that doesn't move the needle. It's built in silence. It's built in structure. It's built in discipline so strong, it makes you uncomfortable. You think elite performers feel inspired every day? You think they love every rep, every call, every meeting, every line of code? No, but they do it anyway. That's why they win. They do what's required, even when it's not rewarding in the moment. They sacrifice the now for the long-term payoff. That's what focus is. The ability to reject momentary pleasure in pursuit of permanent growth. If you can train yourself to sit down and lock in, really lock in for 1 hour a day with zero distractions, with total intensity, with full presence, you will accomplish more in that hour than most people do in an entire day of multitasking and mind wandering. And if you can repeat that day after day, you'll separate yourself from 95% of people within a year, because you're not competing on talent anymore. You're competing on focus. And most people have none. Every excuse you've made has roots in distraction. I don't have time. You had time. You just gave it to nonsense. I'm not ready. You were ready. You just weren't willing to focus. I'm overwhelmed. You're not overwhelmed. You're just scattered. You can't gain momentum when your energy is fractured. You can't finish anything when your brain is chasing 5 directions at once. Simplify, prioritize, and eliminate. Cut ruthlessly. The more you remove, the sharper your focus becomes. And the sharper your focus, the faster you progress. There is no shortcut to mastery, but there is a path, and it starts with showing up, focused, every single day. Not for 10 minutes, not when you feel inspired, for hours, with depth, with consistency. And if you fall off, you don't spiral, you don't reset, you just get back on track and refocus faster. That's the difference between professionals and amateurs. Amateurs wait for the perfect wave. Professionals row. They don't get ready, they stay ready. And they stay focused no matter the noise. You've wasted enough time waiting to feel like it. You've given too many days to aimless distraction. You've surrendered too many mornings to comfort and too many nights to regret. That ends now. If you want to change your life, change your ability to focus. Nothing else matters until you do. Because focus isn't just a tool. It's the root of all growth, all power, all progress. And until you treat it like your greatest asset, you'll keep giving your potential away, one distracted minute at a time. You've handed over your drive in pieces, diluted by flickers of interruption disguised as harmless. The moment something unimportant captured your gaze, you were already drifting from where your purpose was supposed to be built. Nothing yells while it seeps through casually, half glances, quick checks, slight hesitations. That's how everything valuable in your life is traded, not for mistakes, but for moments. Unnoticed moments, stolen silently. You didn't make a decision to surrender your trajectory. You simply didn't guard it. Every tool around you demands slices of your mental bandwidth. Noise isn't obvious anymore. It's engineered to blend in, to appear convenient, even necessary. When achievement disappears, you won't even notice because it's been evaporating slowly while your eyes darted back and forth between obligations and stimulation. You've permitted hijackers into your ambition, disguising themselves as entertainment, updates, alerts. Little vibrations have replaced deep momentum. That is the enemy. Quiet, consistent erosion. There's no alarm when discipline begins dissolving. No red flag rises when your concentration fractures into fragments. You still feel busy, still feel engaged, but that's the trap. Motion exists, direction does. You're caught, moving nowhere, spinning, not progressing, hollow effort disguised as productivity, activity mistaken for achievement. And you rationalize it all, telling yourself you're still doing enough. But you're not. You're just dividing attention so thin, none of it holds weight. While your mind splits, someone else, less talented, less intelligent, less equipped, is constructing a future you'll wish was yours because they've protected their lane. They've eliminated noise. They didn't let background clutter become the center of their days. And here you are, surrounded by tabs, tasks, thoughts, impulses, each pulling with equal urgency, none aligned with elevation. You didn't say yes to failure. You just failed to say no to everything unnecessary. And that's how collapse begins, not from huge decisions, but countless tiny choices made without awareness. You won't lose because of competition. You'll lose because you allow distractions to masquerade as harmless. But nothing insignificant is truly neutral. It either propels you forward or pulls you off course. Every instant spent elsewhere is momentum given up. Delay disguised as dopamine. It feels good now. It ruins later. You crave stimulation because you've rewired yourself to tolerate fragmentation. Your brain adapts to chaos, not by growing stronger, but by settling for lower thresholds of attention until sustained effort feels foreign, until stillness becomes uncomfortable, until silence equals pressure. And so you return to noise. Again, not because you're lazy, but because your threshold for quiet has vanished. You can't go deep because shallow feels safer. You can't create because consumption demands less. You can't build because that would require sitting still with nothing but your own thoughts, and you've forgotten how to endure that. You've outsourced presence to algorithms. You've handed curiosity over to headlines. You've traded personal clarity for curated distraction, and you wonder why fulfillment feels distant. Nothing in this world conspires harder against greatness than convenience. The easier something is to reach, the more likely it's hollow. The harder something becomes to protect, the more essential it likely is. Depth demands deliberate resistance to noise. Excellence requires fencing off the useless. You don't become remarkable by accident. You don't stumble into purpose through comfort. You don't leave legacy while allowing attention to be rented out at the price of momentary pleasure. Distraction doesn't just delay, It steals permanently. No opportunity has ever been missed from lack of talent, but thousands are abandoned every hour from lack of presence, from half-hearted work, from mid-effort thinking, from refusing to shut everything else off and go all in. You haven't failed because the goal was unreachable. You failed because your mind was unreachable. You didn't run out of time. You gave your best hours to repetition disguised as urgency. You fed habits that don't serve you, and now they own you. If you don't reclaim direction, everything around you will dictate it for you. The algorithm doesn't care about your vision. Notifications won't ask if you've moved forward today. Feeds don't check whether you're closer to fulfillment, but they'll all compete for attention. They'll all knock. And unless you reinforce the gates of your focus, they'll always get in. There is no neutral moment. You're either executing or escaping, building or buffering, strengthening or weakening. Time isn't passing, it's being used, by you or for you. And what's not guarded will be taken. Distraction is now designed, intentional, weaponized, built in labs with teams dedicated to one thing, keeping you barely satisfied, just entertained enough not to question it, engaged just enough to never feel urgency. That's the trap. You think you're choosing, but you've been trained. You think you're in control, but you've been conditioned. Your awareness has been optimized out of the equation, and now you're reacting more than you're initiating, responding more than you're leading, consuming more than you're creating. To win, you must build immunity. To reclaim direction, you must subtract ruthlessly. Disconnect decisively. This isn't about turning off your phone. It's about retraining identity, about becoming the kind of individual whose default setting isn't fragmentation, but immersion, not chaos, but command, not flinching every time something buzzes, but owning the room with your intention. That version of you exists, but it can't survive in clutter. You must give it space. It only breathes when noise is crushed. You don't need more hours. You need different ones, undivided ones, consecrated ones. Space where your mind isn't juggling three things, but devouring one. Where you're not checking, switching, drifting, but instead hammering away with surgical focus. That's how breakthroughs happen, not in multitasking, in obsession, in simplicity, in flow states, guarded like sacred rituals. But first, you must strip away the junk, the open tabs, the half-reads, the background music, the endless pings. Relearn how to sit with purpose. Rebuild the attention span you've scattered. Retrain the muscle you forgot you even had. The one that resists novelty, craves discipline, and thrives in singularity. Let discomfort return. Let boredom become a signal, not to escape, but to stay. Break the addiction to stimulation and watch clarity return. Watch creativity rise. Watch output explode, not because you've added more, but because you've removed what never mattered. Progress doesn't come from excess. It comes from elimination, from removing everything irrelevant, until only execution remains, until only purpose remains, until you can finally breathe without being pulled every direction at once. That's the test. Not how well you start, but how deep you can go, how long you can stay there, how well you can ignore the noise trying to pull you off path. Not ignore it once, but ignore it always. Build that habit, and you'll leave mediocrity behind forever. Every single minute where you hold the line, you gain strength. Every second you stay on task when everything else tempts you to drift, you become rare. And rarity is currency. In a world drowning in distraction, focus is wealth. Attention is power, clarity is freedom, but none of it is inherited. All of it is earned through grit, through deliberate detachment, through being unavailable to anything pulling you off mission. That's what you're building. Not just discipline, but refusal. Refusal to be ordinary. Refusal to let the world dictate where your mind goes. Refusal to let your best years disappear inside other people's agenda. This is not about intensity. This is about depth. Depth is painful. Depth is lonely. But depth is where transformation hides. Every external thing pulling at you is surface level, easy, shallow. What you need, what will reshape everything, is buried beneath layers of temptation. It's not about finding more inspiration. You already know what needs to happen. It's about silencing everything that isn't aligned. Not gradually, immediately. Delete, block, exit, clean the slate. And once it's gone, guard the vacuum. Don't refill it. Protect it. Create rituals. Protect your time like it's gold, because it is. Nothing pays more in the long run than unbroken flow. Nothing ruins more than fractured effort. You've been pulled long enough, pushed around by patterns you didn't choose, following impulses instead of strategy, letting randomness replace rhythm. That ends here. Interruptions don't belong. Chaos isn't welcome. Stop being available to everything. Start becoming available to one thing, the thing that moves the needle. That accelerates your climb. That gives you your edge back. Because the quiet enemy you've allowed in, it's been feeding on your greatness, and it doesn't need permission. It only needs apathy, the absence of vigilance. But now you know, now you see it, and now you decide. Either you build an unshakable boundary around your progress, or watch it slip away while something meaningless captures your attention again. You didn't drift by accident. You wandered because there was no fixed point pulling you forward with force. You kept changing lanes, shifting gears, altering courses, not out of creativity, but confusion. Somewhere along the line, you mistook busyness for direction and action for aim. And now you're stuck in a fog of half-formed ideas, half-finished efforts, half-hearted pursuits because you never defined the finish line. You sprinted without first choosing a track. You poured sweat into tasks with no anchor underneath them. You kept moving, but nothing moved for you. That's the cost of vague ambition. It breeds a scattered path. Without a specific end in mind, no amount of hustle builds anything lasting. Without clarity, your decisions are dice rolls. Your progress is a guess. Your results are coincidence at best and regret at worst. Purpose can't live where precision doesn't exist. People assume their vision is implied, that drive alone guarantees a destination. But without articulation, your mission isn't a mission, it's noise. The stronger your outcome is defined, the less temptation pulls at your process. But instead of writing it down, you keep carrying cloudy concepts. You keep chasing feelings instead of metrics. Instead of I will, you live in I might, and that language kills commitment. You say you're serious, but your planning says otherwise. Because you can't aim at something invisible. You can't chase something undefined. You need clarity so loud it drowns every distraction. So detailed it makes excuses irrelevant. Until then, you're not locked in. You're drifting in loops. Directionless energy is dangerous. It wears you out without taking you anywhere. The harder you go without a locked goal, the faster you burn out without building. Activity alone can't save you. Specificity does. If you don't know exactly what your target looks like, how will you know when you're off course? How will you adjust when friction hits? How will you persist when emotion fades? Unclear motives die when challenged, but when the mission is sharp, you don't need to ask if you should continue. You just do. You don't waste time on distractions. You discard them instinctively. That's the superpower clarity provides. Conviction so strong it eliminates hesitation. Most aren't failing from lack of work. They're failing from lack of understanding what that work is supposed to achieve. You don't need more input. You don't need more quotes, more podcasts, more perspectives. You need reflection. You need solitude, brutal enough to force honesty. You need to sit with questions until shallow answers disappear. What matters most? What outcome justifies the cost? What am I willing to bleed for, break for, build for, even when no one claps? Until those answers arrive, you're just running in circles around your own uncertainty. And that's why growth stalls. That's why you plateau. That's why the weeks blur. Not because you're not trying, but because you're working without a lighthouse guiding each step. And the longer you delay clarity, the more chaos fills the gap. What's even worse is that the world rewards confusion with comfort. It lets you feel accomplished for random actions. It makes checking boxes feel like transformation, but nothing extraordinary happens accidentally. The best of the best operate with maps, not moods. They don't wing their purpose, they engineer it. They don't show up and hope to make progress. They measure, they calibrate, they realign constantly to ensure their grind is building something specific, something measurable, something real. Because they know effort without architecture is just expensive burnout. And this isn't just about vision boards or vague optimism. This is about tangible, actionable, quantified understanding of what you're chasing and why. This is about frameworks that keep you locked into your zone, regardless of storms. If you can't articulate your trajectory with ruthless detail, don't expect to reach anything meaningful. The mind needs direction like the body needs oxygen. If it doesn't have it, it panics, it gets anxious, it sabotages. Without clarity, confidence disappears. Discipline feels forced, execution gets sloppy, but with it, you don't flinch, you don't wander, you don't negotiate with failure, you outlast it. And if you make a point that you do not want to go back on, if you disengage from the process, you are one. This is where most fall apart. They want results, but they haven't built the structure necessary to generate them. They keep bouncing between ideas, hoping one finally clicks, never realizing it was never about ideas. It was about structure. It was about defining the game, choosing the rules, and playing it with zero deviation until it breaks open. But the second ambiguity creeps in, so does doubt. And once doubt sets in, it's only a matter of time before the entire engine halts. Not because of ability, but because no one ever drove the vehicle with a set destination. You need to go all in on narrowing everything down. Ruthlessly cut the fluff. Eliminate vague language from your goals. If it isn't measurable, it doesn't belong. If it isn't driving results, it's dead weight. This doesn't make your dreams smaller, it makes it stronger. It makes every minute count. It makes every task purposeful. It ensures that when you grind, you're not just tired, you're progressing. Every ounce of your discipline now becomes a brick in a building that stands, that lasts, that doesn't collapse when emotion fades. When you're clear, you work with urgency because you know what's at stake. You no longer tolerate average effort because your blueprint doesn't leave room for it. Your mornings aren't casual because they're tied to something surgical. Your time isn't reactive, it's weaponized. You prioritize what feeds your vision and delete everything that doesn't. That's how you scale. With precision, not randomness. With design, not impulse. That's what the best do, not more, just clearer, cleaner, sharper, smarter. They don't try harder, they try right. So the real challenge isn't can you hustle? It's can you refine your intention to the point where nothing derails it? Can you build a target so undeniable that even on your worst day, you hit something useful? Can you engineer systems that keep you aligned even when motivation dies? Because it will. It always does. But clarity stays. When it's done right, it survives storms. It carries you when you want to quit. It reminds you what you're fighting for when comfort looks appealing. It keeps your fire lit when the world forgets your name. That's why it's non-negotiable. Stop assuming you're doing enough because you're exhausted. Start verifying that your energy is being spent correctly. Precision over volume. Intention over motion. Direction over effort. That's the rule now. That's how giants are built. They don't guess. They don't wing it. They reverse engineer everything from their endpoint and then show up with tunnel vision. They aren't louder. They're clearer. They don't have more time. They have less confusion. You've got power, but it's scattered. You've got drive, but it's misapplied. You've got work ethic, but it's diluted. Stop romanticizing struggle and start engineering your structure. Start making your progress non-negotiable. Begin outlining the scoreboard that tells you exactly whether today was a win. Clarity isn't optional anymore. It's the foundation. Without it, everything collapses eventually. With it, even chaos can't knock you off course. Now ask yourself this: if your goals were on trial, would there be enough clarity to convict you? Would your schedule prove them? Would your actions align with them? Would your output reflect your stated ambitions? Or would it all fall apart under scrutiny? This isn't about being busy. This is about being exact. This is about being ruthless with alignment. No detours, no fluff, no maybe. Just yes or no, in or out, real or not. That's what changes everything. Not louder motivation, sharper articulation, tighter execution, fewer options, more commitment. If you're not dialed in, you're drifting. And if you're drifting, your goals are dying quietly behind a curtain of noise. Don't let them. Define, sharpen, cut, then execute. Repeat until results are undeniable. Repeat until momentum becomes your default. Repeat until people ask how you became so unstoppable and you smile, knowing the truth. You stopped guessing. You stopped guessing, but that wasn't the end of the struggle. That was the beginning of the war. The real grind doesn't start with clarity. It begins when you're forced to defend it. When you're no longer distracted, no longer directionless, no longer deceived by fake progress, now the resistance arrives. Not in the form of external chaos, but in the quiet pull of your lesser self. That part of you that whispers, just take it easy today. That internal weakness that dresses itself as logic, as fairness, as deserved rest, that's not recovery, that's sabotage. And it's not loud, it's subtle. It's persistent. It waits until you've done a little bit, then tells you it's enough. It waits until you've built momentum, then tempts you with softness. The lie of moderation creeps in exactly when your intensity begins to matter most. This isn't about drive anymore. This is about refusal. You either deny every impulse that pulls you backward or you surrender. There's no neutral ground. Comfort offers nothing but decay. The mind loves to romanticize balance, but balance becomes an illusion when your goals demand obsession. You don't need permission to push further. You need courage to ignore the noise. You need rage toward weakness. The internal voice that bargains with discipline must be overruled. Every time. That softness is the virus. The infection spreads quietly. It starts with just one compromise, then another. Soon you've lowered your standards in the name of self-care, when really you've just stopped showing up the way you swore you would. Most people never win because they never commit to a battle they can't escape. They keep their fallback plans. They keep the backup doors. They keep rationalizations ready just in case they don't feel like executing. And that's the problem. If you don't destroy the option of easing off, you'll choose it when it hurts. If you keep alternatives around, you'll reach for them the second fatigue arrives. You can't leave room for retreat. This is not about being fair to yourself. It's about building something unshakable. And that never happens by accident. That never happens with softness. That never happens with sympathy for your own excuses. You must become violent with anything that makes you soft. Anything that tries to convince you that you've earned a break when your work isn't done is the enemy. The truth is, you've earned nothing if your discipline folds under pressure. You've earned nothing if your rituals disappear when conditions shift. That's what separates real winners from wishful amateurs. They keep going. They keep performing when no one's watching, when they're tired, when everything tells them to stop. Not because they feel like it, but because they've killed the part of themselves that negotiates with fatigue. This war is internal. It's not about talent. It's not about resources. It's about who's willing to override weakness. The battle is moment by moment. The moment you hit friction, the moment the burn starts, the moment resistance rises, you must choose aggression. You must choose push over pause, force over feelings, will over comfort. You don't back off. You don't flinch. You drive through. That's where progress lives. Not in the easy reps, but in the hard ones. Not in the smooth days, but in the ones where everything inside you screams for rest and you show up anyway. Your biggest threat isn't difficulty. It's softness. You've been trained to associate discomfort with damage. to pull back whenever the burn starts, to believe every hard thing must come with breaks and leniency. But this mindset is poison. That voice in your head telling you to go easy is not protecting you. It's limiting you. You've been conditioned to seek comfort in the middle of chaos when what you need is ferocity. Every time you hold back because something feels hard, you reinforce the belief that struggle should be avoided. That's the belief that ruins growth. You think high performers are built different? No, they just refuse to believe their own excuses. They just refuse to trust the tired version of themselves. They understand that real strength isn't felt, it's chosen, repeated, compounded, hardened through effort they didn't want to give. You keep saying you'll go harder tomorrow, but you're building the habit of backing off today. And that habit won't magically disappear. It'll show up again when the next challenge hits. You can't negotiate with yourself forever and expect to win. Sooner or later, you must destroy the option of underperformance completely. Your future is shaped by what you tolerate now. If you tolerate weakness, weakness multiplies. If you tolerate hesitation, hesitation becomes normal. You must decide, do you want comfort today or strength forever? Because you don't get both. And every soft choice chips away at your potential. Every skipped session, every lowered standard, every excuse you believe becomes part of your identity. You're not just missing out on progress. You're rewiring your brain to quit easier next time. That's how the spiral starts. One compromise becomes a pattern. One bad day becomes a bad week. And suddenly, everything you said you wanted is sitting behind a wall of comfort you built with your own decision. The people who break through didn't have better conditions. They just enforced higher standards. And that's what you need now. Not another break, not another reminder, not another delay. You need to raise your threshold for pain. Raise your expectations for yourself. Raise your demand for execution. Every day you show up hard, you build calluses that protect you from quitting. Every time you push, when you could have paused, you thicken the mental arm. That's how resilience is built. Not through motivation, but through relentless refusal, through showing up angry at mediocrity, through choosing punishment over pause, through waging war against the easy path. Most people won't do that. Most people settle the moment things get difficult. Most people fold when life pushes back. But you're not most people. You're done with softness. You're done with giving yourself permission to fail. You're done with comfort being the reason progress doesn't happen. You don't need inspiration. You need aggression. Not against others, against the old version of yourself. The one that tolerated average. The one that hesitated. The one that said maybe later. That version has to die. You kill it every time you do the thing you don't want to do. You kill it every time you keep going when you'd rather stop. You kill it every time you hold the line when every part of you wants to drop it. That's how you evolve, through violent commitment to never returning to who you were. You're not going to feel ready. You're not going to feel strong. You're not going to feel like a machine every morning. But feelings don't matter here. Identity does. And identity is shaped by repetition. Who you become is decided by what you do when no one's watching. That's the moment that forges legacy. Not what you say you want, but what you do when the grind hits and the finish line feels distant. The mission isn't supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be brutal. It's supposed to test you. And if you're not getting tested, you're not growing. You're pretending. This is the point where most people retreat. They say they're tired. They say they've done enough. They say they deserve a break. But breaks are for closers. Breaks are for finishers. You haven't earned anything until the work is done. The standard is simple. Execute relentlessly. Whether it's hard, whether it's boring, whether it hurts, you keep showing up. Because the mission is bigger than your mood. The future is bigger than your feelings. And once you let go of needing it to feel good, you finally get the power to do what needs to be done. It's not about being fearless. It's about being willing. Willing to face the discomfort. Willing to take another step after you thought you were done. Willing to act when everything inside you says wait. Willing to override your instincts. That's where the breakthrough lives, on the other side of willingness. And that's what most will never understand. They wait to feel different, but you move regardless. You act because it's required. And that's why you win, because this journey was never about comfort. It was about conquest. And conquest demands brutality, with everything holding you back. Would you like to begin Keynote 5 now?